Infamous.
So we're the infamous. I have been passing your book out, and I actually have some parents that have been using ICD 999 to ward off the school nurse and force vaccination.
It works really well, especially if you hit them with the spine.
Stop it, man.
Yeah, or the corner of the spine right on the bridge of their nose.
Did you know that hardbound books are actually banned in some prisons because they can be used as a weapon?
Information is power.
Only when it's chucked at high speed. Otherwise, it's just fuel waiting to be burnt.
An apple a day keeps the doctor away, especially if you throw it really hard.
And it's one of those that come from Washington State that is like 10 years old and as hard as a rock.
I'll take that over those mealy ones that actually taste like somebody injected bad applesauce into a skin.
Oh, some of them are awful nowadays. I'll second that. Like, that's awful. So, does anybody have any topics we want to talk about? Otherwise, I was sent a couple of questions. I have to go find them. Anything in a notebook, Patrick?
Well, we always have a pattern of talking about weather, religion, and politics. So I thought I'd open up the day just talking about the sou'easter that blew in with a whiteout blizzard and lightning just flashing all around the house with thunder.
Snow thunder.
I've never seen it before. I have seen lightning and thunder in gray skies in February, which is still considered winter in the grain ghetto, but I've never seen lightning snap in the middle of a blizzard. So I can only assume that it's aluminized snow and it's building up some kind of charge.
Well, there was 24 inches of snow in the last 6 days here at present in the Appalachians. And we lit it on fire again today. When you take a torch, not one like you, not a big heavy propane torch, but a butane torch, and hold it up against there, it kind of like you ever take a lighter and melt a styrofoam white cup. It has the same properties as that. It doesn't drip. It doesn't condense back into water. It off-gases off, it shrivels up, and it turns black. And it doesn't matter. We use 3 different butane, whether it would be a cigarette lighter or a miniature torch or whatever, but it's like it all does the same. So I would say the VOCs in the air, because it smells really foul. I'll be finding out. I just did come across some technology, hopefully, that we can figure out, elementally wise, what's in this stuff.
Let's see, weather, religion, and politics. I think I got it covered. Christ on a cracker, fuck this snow, I vote no more.
I wept. Forgive me.
That was poetic.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so Wu, what questions do you have from our wonderful listener base?
Okay, so we have some concern because on the scan, we have a lot of this weird, a lot of bacteria, fungi, molds. How about some larger organisms like Leishmania, which is or Bertonella, which is a Lyme bacteria, and they're showing up, and people are like getting freaked out.
Burt Reynolds is a Lyme bacteria?
Bortonella, not. You never know. He could come back from the grave as one of them.
Burt
Isn't he
Reynolds is
dead
dead?
now? I don't know. I don't know. In my mind, I'm thinking he is. I don't know. Maybe he's not. But I just want to, bring into reality here in audio for those listeners and those in real time, as well as anybody going to listen to the archives, that first of all, I'll recommend going to my website, bodyelectrician.com. You go to the information media tab and you watch that very first video. It's that important. It's the first one. Okay, Bruce Lipton, 2011. Okay, there's a lot of other references, but this is the easiest one. All this stuff is in the environment. This idea of a tick-borne disease is basically a marketing ploy, a fear porn ploy. This idea of, oh my God, this is an infectious disease. No, sorry, that's not real. That's not the way things work.
Wait. Oh, I want to quote one of my favorite authors, Patrick Jordan.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's a tick-borne disease, but who gave it to the tick, man?
Probably some white guys with German background that don't speak much English off the coast of Long Island at this place called Plum Island in 1975. And I did get to meet a janitor. This is how cool my life is. So we were on Long Island a couple of years ago, and we got invited over to a house party after our talk. And a guy showed up, played guitar pretty good too. I've never seen anybody smoke so much weed and still be standing up. Unbelievable. This guy, and he's a janitor. He's the janitor out on Plum Island. That was one of his jobs he had in his life. In the 80s and the 70s, evidently. And he shared some of the crazy stuff that went on there. The genetic modifications, the cloning, the biological and chemical warfare creation like Lyme, and actually getting the Lyme to stick in the ticks and then dropping ticks out of the air on around as a biological weapon. It's amazing just listening to people's stories. What you hear. This guy was just a janitor. But yet he didn't have to decontaminate himself when he was in there when he went home. So it wouldn't surprise me if he brought some of that stuff back to the mainland. So back to the infectious disease marketing ploy. Everything's infectious if you want to look at it from that standpoint in my book. If your immune system is down far enough and your overall vibrant health is not there, you are ill. What sets up in you is extremely unique to you, but yet to what manifests. There's some correlations I've been noticing with negative emotional programming in your body, and then certain illnesses or certain areas of your body that the pathogens manifest in. And I'll refer you back to a book that I've referred to before, and I'll refer to it many more times. Your body speaks your mind. That book goes into great detail about the different parts of your body and how disease manifests, symptoms manifest in your body related to, associated to the negative emotional programming that's taken place, the traumas in your life, or how you perceive your life. Like I've had people that have been attacked by government agencies, and then 2 years later, after defending themselves and having to actually lose their whole livelihood, their house, their business, and everything else, develops problems with their lower colon. And this person was severely attacked and perceived it as a fundamental attack to their entire life. So then they had this physical problem of lower GI tract having major problems and just massive amounts of pain. It's a whole field of study called energy psychology, or it's coupled in with epigenetics, the new science, one of the new sciences. So you got any words about this concept of infectious diseases, Patrick? Because I love your books, because your book, especially ICD 999, sets pretty much everybody up to get the understanding of how the immune system gets shut down with the use of vaccinations.
So that begs the question of what is a naturally acquired infectious organism?
I'm going to say there's not one.
Pretty much after a certain period in the 1900s, all bets were off, and everything that we experience now comes directly from laboratories. And with the overseeing, I guess would be the right word, the overseeing presence of DARPA. They've engineered kill switches into their own organisms because they don't want to be caught with the same things that they're polluting us with.
I have a real-time cross-reference to that as an analogy. Can I share that, Patrick?
I don't know why you keep asking.
Well, you're talking, and I really got an analogy. This is real time. I just heard this from somebody that I know that works in the fracking industry. You're gonna love this logic. I mean, it is like textbook industrial educated, no minds. There's a lot of fracking going on all over the country. And now people are suing the fracking companies for polluting their wells because they're finding all these chemicals. I just found out that this one company uses used motor oil to the tune of 120 or more gallons per well to keep their wire lines lubricated when they go up and down 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 feet. They're just putting used motor oil down inside the well casings to keep the well casing slippery, so their tools can go in and out of the hole faster. That's insane. They're putting radioactive pellets with specific radioactive signatures for each different well driller, so they can tell and prove in a court of law if radiation and these chemicals are showing up in people's wells. All they got to do is test the water coming out, and they can tell which drilling off it based on the radioactive elements they're finding on who's responsible to pay the landowner when they sue them for contamination. That would be the same. That would be similar logic to what you just said there, wasn't it?
Bring it home for me.
Well, I didn't hear you, Patrick. What was that?
Yeah, my phone clicked. Bring it home for me.
The kill switch. They're putting signatures into the organisms, just like they're putting the radioactive signature into the wells, so they can determine who's at fault. Or the kill switch is who's not at fault, because then it's like I forget the military terminology for that. Maybe Dr. Noon, you know the military, where they put a bomb down, the bomb goes off, and there's no signature of anything. They can't trace anything back. Of whose bomb it was. I forget that signature, so. Oh, go ahead, I'll mute myself.
No, that's okay. Because it's funny, I was just going to say that it's like, autographing the bullet. It's a little bit late at that point. So the only reason you would do that is the reason why any good artist signs their work, to take credit.
I finally see where Will's going with this. The on-off switches are exactly like what you have on a lawnmower. You push that little tab onto the spark plug, and it shorts it out, and it kills the engine. But what Will's talking about is they actually have genetic signatures engineered into the bugs that are markers. They're tabs. They're like, hey, look what I made, as the ending line to all the X-Files episodes had. And so, yeah, now I'm online with where you're going with this. The on-off switches are pretty much, I wouldn't say generic, but they are what they are. They're just functional mechanics to the bugs. But they actually do. And see, here's the thing where fantasy crosses over with reality. There was a show called Fringe, and they would always open it up with these weird, iconic images, some of which was seahorses and other animals. And apparently they had somehow inflicted those images, those tags, those signatures into genetic manipulations that somehow was developed in the theme throughout the show, which I never got to finish because TV went digital.
Well, also, too, Will, I know you were involved with it when they developed and ultimately perfected the synthetic self-assembling molecules in what we've collectively lumped together to be called Morgellons. They started putting company names and barcodes on them, using nanotechnology. If you looked at them under the microscope, they had names, they had part numbers, they had scan codes on them.
Yeah, I've got a few pictures from the microscope you can clearly make out, origin, company of origin, specific different markings on the chips. I got a blog I put up a few years ago that I took pictures of hexagon wafers that actually were growing these hair-looking worms, nematodes, out of them. And actually one chip was produced, it came out of another chip. So one was the mama chip, and the other one was a baby chip. And there's it would be identifying marker signatures on these chips. Clearly, I mean, it looks like a dot and dash code on the chip in specific lines, just like you would on the Matrix movie, similar to that. It very clearly marked right there. I mean, we're picking up signatures of this stuff all the time. Different metal signatures, different components put together, different EMFs. But I just thought this was just a couple weeks ago. I discovered that this fellow shared with me because I was asking questions about the fracking, and they said, no, we have a specific radioactive pellet that we have to put down each well that we do in order to make sure that nobody can just sue us out of the blue. They have to actually prove that it is our radioactive signature in their water before we have to pay. That's government mandated now. See, just like that on-off switch, because everything has marketing potential. There's monetary potential to everything the military does, everything that medicine does, everything the industrial sector does, because it's all corporation. Everything. So they have to have identifying markers to prove that they get monetary compensation, because everything is patented in the industrialized world. If you operate in that world and live in that world. This is the Securities and Exchange Commission. This is the tie-in. This is the corporate medicine. This is the conversion of the human being into a fictitious entity that gets monetized on. Did you say something, Patrick?
Yeah, the added benefit is that you get not only toxic materials pollution of your water, you also get the radiation pollution. So it's a win-win situation for them.
Exactly. And if you're a fracking company and if you're involved in changing somebody's genetic makeup and then the doctors patent that, you're partly responsible, so then you can get a paycheck out of it too. Because you're creating a new patentable element.
And if anybody's interested talking about corporate America, go to YouTube, to Revolution Radio's YouTube channel, and look at Sean David Morton's show, Strange Universe, for February 12th and 13th. The shows are like an hour and 15 minutes each. Somebody put together a website and went and did the Dun & Bradstreet research on the, I believe, 8,000 corporations that make up the United States government. And the actual parent corporation of the government of the United States of America, the CEO, is the Archbishop of Washington, D.C., who happens to be a Jesuit, shockingly enough. But it's a pretty entertaining. I find Sean entertaining, but the research is incredible. They actually went through the Dun & Bradstreets, and we found out things like Canada is a subchapter S of the Corporation of the United States, I believe franchised in Denver. Australia is a sub S, Germany is a sub S, and somebody actually went through, spent a period of years going through Dun & Bradstreet, gathering all of them and putting them together on a website. So check out Strange Universe, Sean David Morton on Rev Radio for February 12th and 13th.
I have a client who was in mid to high management in Dun & Bradstreet. And just a couple of years ago, the Russian Federation signed up and got its Securities Exchange Commission numbers and is listed on Dun & Bradstreet. Everything, all the bigger, the NATO countries, there is no governments. Everything, for the most part, is a corporation. And it's all about money. It's all about creating this fictitious money thing and enslaving the population. Basically, it's a shuck and jive. Some of the stories that he was telling about how these corporations operate and structure themselves to protect themselves. I mean, it's fascinatingly interesting just to listen to I'm going to call it the psychosis of the industrial mind. There is no humanity at all. None. That is why a cop can take his billy club and crush somebody's skull and go home at night. There is no humanity. That's how one corporation can sue another corporation and get by with it without having anything happen, because it's just fictitious groups manipulating each other. There's no humanity. The 14th Amendment took the humanity away. That's my view, one of my views.
Well, it's listed right in Black's Law Dictionary. The definition of a human is a beast. You know, we're chattel, we're livestock. And whether you want to consider it a conscious effect of programming, you know, all the programming that we're exposed to, whether it be chemical, audio, visual, whatever, or you just want to consider it subversively through the treatment, the fact remains is that how can you expect the population at large to act with humanity as humans when their entire existence is literally conducted as what they really are? They are just head of cattle. I mean, it's not even, you know, people say, you know, oh, the government doesn't want to kill us, or they couldn't possibly kill us, or this or that or that or this. I'm like, you know what? Get your head out of your ass. Okay? It's not even about that at this point. It's not about that they can. It's about it's a game. They toy with us. It's a maze, and we're the little mice. You know, chemical warfare nowadays can be targeted to the individual. They could drop a bomb on an entire city and kill one person genetically. They could kill everybody with blonde hair, blue eyes. Not only could they just kill them, they could probably turn them into freaking, 80-foot tall, 6-armed giants if they want to. I mean, they have the genetic manipulation in the human genome down to that point. And although it is about money, it's not about the collection of them. It's not even about them collecting the money. It's about them depriving us of it to keep us running for it and then figure out new and creative ways to take it away from us. And this is what all this technology is. It's not just about absolute dollars. These people already have, if you want to call them people, they already have all the money and the ability to print all the money. They have all the physical assets. They have everything they need. This is purely entertainment at this point, at our level.
That allows me to tie all the way back to Will's initial premise of the disease state concurrent with an emotional state. And since I am the Mr. Spock and I don't deal in emotions, my own experiences were dealing with a billion-dollar dialysis corporation whose members, of course, were not human beings. They were the offspring of Hasatan itself. And I could be within maybe 6 to 8 feet. You would consider that a personal communicating space. And I could smell the foulness on their breath. I mean, it was a bacterial stench coming out of the very depths of these people. And although I don't get upset other than pure anger and rage, I don't get emotional, I don't get worrisome, I don't get fretful over any kind of confrontation. My stomach was being tied in knots within minutes, as if I felt like I was having an ulcer, because the foulness that they had communicated to me by speaking was an infectious organism that attacks the gut. And so whereas, somebody might work in a cubicle and go, oh, my boss yelled at me and I felt really bad and then I got ill. Well, my position has always been, your boss yelled at you, he belched out the foulness inside of himself, you got ill and then you felt bad. These creatures are not humans.
And, Patrick, you and I had spoken about this before. In the breeding and grooming schools of the uber elite,
right.
They are hyper aware and sensitive to halitosis. And we talk about this from the standpoint of bacteria and the colonies that live within us and the ability of microorganisms to actually hijack the mind and the behavior of the host. But psychopathy has a fucking smell to it. And these people know that. And they are super self-conscious of it because apparently it's one thing that they haven't been able to compensate for.
And just now, because you're right, people can check the archives. We have explored this idea before. And it's just now that I got a flash of, I can't remember if it's Alien number 4 or 5. It's the one where the aliens were swimming in the spaceship called Father. And the way that you could navigate between the different zones of that space station was you had to breathe into a coded panel that would recognize you by your breath.
By your halitosis flavor of the day?
I'm sorry, man, but it's like now it's completely burnt into my head. I'll never think of that movie the same way again.
Dogs do it all the time, except they're spelling the halitosis of the other end.
Alien Resurrection. That was the name of the movie. And just so everybody understands how deep Illuminati lethal humor is, the name of the space station was called Father. And so the first thought that I had when I realized what they were talking about is, our Father who art in heaven.
Halitosis be thy name?
Stop it, man. Don't do it.
Breath mint, anyone?
So, on the face of it, people actually have the skills then to determine the us against them. They stink. I actually came up with a phrase that hell stinks because a lot of chemicals are colorless, odorless, and tasteless, but there are quite a number. All you have to do is bring to mind burnt brakes. Anybody that's ever smelled burnt brakes or burnt clutch will know what I'm talking about. Hell has an odor to it. You can determine it. And if you can determine it and you know it's bad for you, stay the hell away.
Well, in the classic, metaphors, it's brimstone and sulfur that is the literary smell of hell. And the interesting thing about that is if you look at traditional Chinese and especially Vedic, they claim that sulfur inhibits your your hypothalamus, the part of your brain that connects the two hemispheres. So too much sulfur in your system locks you into either a left brain or a right brain mode. And since we're predominantly all in left brain modes anyway, to literally be in hell is to be locked in the analytical, digital, archonic left brain with no spirituality.
Well, you just tied in all the world's religions right now.
I didn't tie them in. They all came from the same freaking place.
Well, that's what I mean, but you wove them all into this conversation.
Hey man, if you look at the religions out there, including Blavatsky and the birth of the New Age, the family fucking tree doesn't fork. It's a vine.
And it's really, really long.
What are you giggling at, Mr. Jordan?
That's a quote, man. I can write it down.
How's
What are
my
you
book
writing
coming,
down?
by the way?
Are you going to be the pen name?
No, he's just going to be the real name. The book's going to be called Shit I Got from Bob.
That's funny.
So
I take everything with a grain of salt, and that's actually a black magic's joke right there. Salt is supposed to ward off demons in every single tradition that I've studied. That kind of indictment against sulfur and sulfur-containing things that we eat puts into question many cultures of cooking traditions. You and I have discussed, Bob, the use of garlic and onions in the Italian cuisine, and there has to be more to it than just a pat proclamation of sulfur will doom you to hell.
Well, I'm sure there is, and because I've always claimed this. It's just interesting to me from a personal upbringing, cultural standpoint. The Italians, if you want to look at the culture, the Mediterranean cultures, but I mean my specific personal experience is being a first generation Italian American. I came from a very mountainous, rural background. My grandmother was one of 17. All the women in her family were Stregaria Italian witches. And, you can think what you want about witches, folks, the black pony hats, all that crap. It's just like, whatever. That's just programming. I'm talking about these people we would equate them to being the native Italians, like we say Native Americans. People that lived exceptionally close to the land. And it's no surprise that Italians eat a huge amount of garlic. Now, as far as the effect on the hippocampus or hypothalamus, I can't think of the right name, Patrick, if you come up with it, but the part of the brain that connects the two hemispheres. I always found it very interesting, especially when I got into Italian motorcycles. Everything the Italians do is shaped like a woman. Okay, everything they do, they always talk about Italian passion to the point of the fact that we're completely and totally irrational. We're hotheads. The way design works in Italy is they draw something gorgeous, and then an engineer has to make it work. And if he makes it ugly in the process, they will stone him to death. The only designer that Ducati ever had that wasn't an Italian was a South African, and it's amazing to me that he made it out of Italy alive. The traditions are of taking the aesthetic and organically making it function, and they don't compromise. Now, contrast this with the Germans, who, form follows function. They literally only see beauty in that which is functional. Okay, so this is an indication that there may be some truth to the fact that it's not an absolute left brain versus an absolute right brain thing. It's just a matter of culturally, where do you get stuck? Because it would be pretty easy to say that the Italians, as a generalization, obviously there's exceptions to everything, but as a generalization, when you look at what they're culturally known as, they are completely and totally philosophically locked into right brain mode compared to what you would consider to be, a typical German, Western frame of mind. And then you look at the Vedic cultures who really do speak the most about this whole sulfur, garlic, onion thing. They consider it a medicine. They consider it as an aid to balance, not as a food substance. And if you paint the broad brush over Vedic cultures, they're the most balanced between the grasp of what we would consider to be an esoteric understanding of the universe and the ability to apply logic and reason to it, which is why the Mid and Far Eastern cultures are so technologically further advanced than we are openly. Lord only knows what we have in Black Projects. But in open science, those people are way more advanced in concepts like time travel, simply because their left brain daily logic and reason includes a vocabulary and understanding and a mathematics system that enables them to engineer their right brain thoughts. And we simply in the Western world do not have that vocabulary, and we do not have that mathematical system. We have been purposefully restricted in our ability to communicate esoteric ideas.
Our whole language is, and our whole social engineering is to stop that capacity and shut that information off, so that is not a real thing. Referring to the esoteric side of life.
Mr. Jordan, based on your rather deep but rarely referenced understanding of the Far Eastern, do you find any similarities to that?
I'm always conflicted because I came from a classical Rockefeller-based training system. When the Eastern populations are referenced, there's always this fawning over the mathematical genius of those that come from the country of India. And that has always just been a curiosity to me, because if we're talking left brain, man, mathematics is nothing but left brain. But then you have to ask yourself, there were quite a number of mathematicians through history that actually saw their equations. They weren't just playing with abstract combinations of letters and numbers. They actually saw the results before the advent of supercomputers. So then now, in real time, I'm kind of like talking this out with you guys. It almost seems that this, what would be construed as a purely left brain function of mathematics, might not have that integrative aspect to it, because if you are a mathematic genius, that must mean you know that it has a practical application. Because I went through analytical geometry and trigonometry once and never knew that it had a physics application. The second time I went through it, I was still struggling, but I knew that it had a physics application to it, and I tried to have the instructor approach it for me from that position, and they were so dogmatic in the way they learned it that it was merely rote vomiting of equations and their answers, that the instructor couldn't even relate to the fact that I said this has an engineering, reality to it. Help me understand it.
Well, it's interesting because I tend to break mathematics down into the empirical and the developmental. And, Isaac Newton's given credit for creating calculus, but anybody that can crack a book knows that he pretty much plagiarized calculus. It was around long before him. But when I look at things like quantum computing and quantum physics, these require formulas that don't resolve to the same answer when you repeat them. in order for them to be accurate. And if you look at empirical mathematics or Western mathematics, that is basically the substantiation for the accuracy of a mathematical system, is that there is absolutely no deviation when performing the same function more than one time. So when one looks at fractal math, it's basically the same thing, the infinitely repeatable in both directions with the random answer all the time, the Mandelbrot set. So when we talk about the mysteries of, or the accolades, if you want to say, put upon Vedic math, so to speak, it's not, like you said, Patrick, math is math. 2 + 2 is 4. But we're talking about the creation of operators that quite simply are what we would consider to be in the Western world random, unvalidatable, and magic. And yet that is what's required for today's highest branches of hyperdimensional physics and quantum computing and quantum reality.
You just described exactly what you outlined in previous shows, that alchemy is the one-off of what chemistry is in the anally repeatable. And I'm trying to wrap my mind around what you just said about fractals. That's a very deep and poignant observation, that fractals have that repeatable quality to it, but the variables, the numbers that generate it, are in constant flux. Whereas the quantum world, if I'm trying to wrap my mind around what you said, that's almost the opposite of it. The inputs are the same, but the outputs are changing every time.
Exactly. And like I said, the only way I'm able to fit my brain in the concept is to draw a distinction between the math of the empirical and the math of the, for lack of a better expression, the esoteric. It's quite literally the development of mathematical formulas and equations and models that model randomness and uncertainty, and though they're unvalidatable and unrepeatable, they're always accurate.
Kind of like homeostasis.
He said it again. I wouldn't be able to repeat it, but I get it when you say it.
That's what homeostasis is.
Yeah, it's constantly seeking a balance that never occurs. Because the moment balance occurs and becomes static, things cease to exist. This is my whole thing of everybody that ever says to me, no matter what the question is, the answer's always love. No, then you got a fucking 50 on the test, dude. Because it's only love 50% of the time. Okay? The other 50% of the time, it's the opposite of love. Sorry, here's your consolation prizes, go home. We can never achieve the static, because the static is by definition to cease to exist. Nothing exists anymore when it's static.
That's what people would benefit so much about this constant seeking balance. This is, in certain realms of thought, this would be called mastership. There's never static.
In every single creation motif that there is, in the tri-goddesses of the Druids, the Celts, in the individual triple goddesses required of creation in the Greek and Roman Parthenons, in the Gnostic concepts, there is always 3 aspects to creation, the trilogy, and one of those aspects is always chaos. Okay, creation comes from chaos, and it's basically what we're talking about here is chaos math. Okay, the ability to model the intent and the randomness of creation, and that chaos is the opposing force to the homeostasis. We always seek the balance, and that seeking the balance is the driving vector. It's the direction and the force that the chaos takes to achieve balance. And then once you go past balance, you overshoot it, and the vector goes in completely the opposite direction, and you're back into chaos again. And there's the oscillation of the entire energetic universe that we live in, and it's entirely random. And empirical, concrete, repeatable math just in no way, shape, or form can even become close to modeling that, except in a very limited digital scope, which is why that when you're standing in your backyard and you throw a baseball or you fire a gun, Newton works just fine. But bolt a couple of light years from here away, and it's like using Legos to build the Empire State Building. Okay? It may look pretty, but don't try to ride the elevator up to the observation deck.
I like that analogy.
It's a rather odd one for me. I don't know why suddenly architecture sprang into my head.
Broadening your horizons these days, maybe.
Too much sulfur.
We're just looking for something really tall to jump off of with a rather humorous take, which would be the Lego Empire State Building. Yeah. In the summer when I used to ride a lot and everybody used to want to stop and have a drink or something like that, because it was kind of literally like drinking water. People would drink their beers and people would drink their drinks, and I would literally go into a bar and order a beer mug full of vodka and ice, and I tell them, I don't care how many shots you put in, I don't care, I don't need you walking back here every fucking 5 minutes. Give me a freaking beer mug, pack it with fucking ice and fill it with vodka, charge me what you need to, and keep it full.
There you go, and we're back on live.
And welcome back, everyone, to Another Perspective, which is the longest-running guest appearance, I believe, in the history of radio, where I, myself, Bob, or Dr. No, and the world-renowned author Patrick Jordan have been guest appearancing on what used to be Dr. Wil Spencer's show for, God, Dave, how long has it been? It's got to be over a year now.
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years. The longest guest appearances in history.
And God, we do have fun, though.
And I would like to take this time to remind everyone that Wolf Spirit Radio is entirely listener-supported, so come on over to wolfspiritradio.com and find a donate button and click it like you have Jimmy Leg and help keep this insanity on the air. And as always, we welcome callers, contributors, critics especially. So give us a shout at 702-879-4770 or Skype in to wolfspirit.switchboard, the number 1, Wolfspirit Switchboard 1, and let us know what is on your mind if you have any questions or comments. And I also strongly urge that you hop on over to wolfspiritradio.com/wolf chat and join us all in the chat room. We have quite a wonderful crowd in the chat room, and if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat room in all caps. And you can also support wolfspiritradio.com by subscribing to our audio archives for a mere $5 a month. So that's another great way to keep us on the air, and it gets you to be able to listen to this insanity over and over and over again, which you're probably going to have to do to make any sense out of it whatsoever. So that being said, do I have my wonderful co-host / co-guest / original heir apparent to this radio show back with me yet?
Slash, isn't he with Guns N' Roses?
He used to be, not anymore.
Okay, well, that shows my age.
And just think, I got at least 27 songs set up for the 2nd of April. That's all of Peter Gabriel's I could draw down from YouTube.
Oh, wow.
One of my beloved donators to Wolf Spirit Radio has a daughter who's going to turn 18 on the 2nd of April. And I promised the daughter, whose name is Luann, that I would play nothing but a whole segment of music for her for at least 2 hours with her favorite musicians, which are Peter Gabriel and Neil Young. And why am I doing that? Just because I happen to have a special appreciation for that lovely lady who donates money every month to my radio station.
You know what I wish, Dave?
What?
I wish I could remember being 18.
I remember being 35.
Wow. Jack Benny.
Exactly.
So, Dr. No, Dave, what are we going to talk about till the show host actually comes back?
Let's talk about the name in all capital letters for a minute.
Yeah.
Anything that has your name in all caps is corporation related. If it has your all caps name on it, it doesn't refer to you. It refers to your corporate ID, which you cannot use because why? It's registered to the Queen of England. So send that bitch the bill. Right, Bob?
Hey, man, like I said, pop on over, go to YouTube, look up Rev Radio, find Sean David Morton's show from February 12th and February 13th. He does pretty much an hour in both of those shows on it, and it will go through the corporate ownership of the United States and take you right back to the whole thing of your straw man, your birth certificate actually being your death certificate, your straw man going back through the IMF to the Queen of England, the IRS being founded strictly as a collection agent for the Queen. I mean, he pretty much goes into all of it. And the thing that I find fascinating about it is, unlike most of the Constitution tards, I happen to personally, like I said, find Sean very entertaining. He's very practical, and it's very easy to digest, and you can then go to the websites that he's getting the information off of and basically get as in-depth of it as you want. I mean, you've heard me talk about this before. You know, all of these people that go out and they tell you about all these legal loopholes, you know, use chicken blood and write down this secret sentence on a piece of toilet paper and wipe your ass with it, stuff it in an envelope, mail it to the Pope with its upside-down stamp and a bad address so it gets returned to you, and then burn it in your ashtray and you never have to pay taxes again. You know, number one, it's funny. All of these people want you to pay for their services in the Federal Reserve notes they claim are valueless when they apply their accepted for value crap on you. And the other thing is, I love it when they broadcast their updates from prison. I am a free man. I am a sovereign. Yeah, how's that fucking bar cell working for you there, buddy? I mean, you know, this is a game that was designed for you to play and not win.
Thank you. That says it so eloquently.
Well, probably not eloquently, but definitely accurately.
And very clearly, too, I might add.
Along the lines of Dr. No saying that they actually play with human beings like a cat plays with mice, if you look at a lot of things that you get in the mail, your name will come in the beginning caps and then following with lowercase for your name. And then internally to it, you know, like if it's a credit card offering, the credit card itself will have your name in all caps. So they will send it to the person and then take that personhood from them in the actual transaction.
And when you ask the credit card company, card issuer, for the wedding contract between you and them, they get all pissy and start making threats. That's that's the stage I am now with Springleaf Finance or Springleaf Mortgage Company or Springleaf something or other. They just sent me and said, they're going to foreclose in my house.
And it's pretty interesting because threats is how it works. Fear is how it works. You know, they want you to just be afraid and acquiesce because they know if you fight them at a certain level, they don't have a leg to stand on.
Oh, I have another letter. I'm going to say, reference your threatening letter of 9 April 2014, copy enclosed.
See, on straight collection matters, there's the Consumer Fair Credit Reporting Act and the Consumer Credit, is it the Credit Collection Act? I forget. There's actually two very powerful laws that are on the side of the creditor when it comes to collections, and they're fairly clear cut and they're very easy to implement, and you can implement them with a great deal of success. That's why they're not touted very much. But all of this other half magic crap, you know, I've heard, you know, the Roman Curia, you know, removing the immunity of the heads of the corporations. And if you follow the corporate chains, yeah, they all do go back to the Jesuits and the Vaticans, and there is some merit to that. But you try to play that game in court, and I promise you're going to jail. I mean, because that's where all these people end up. And you know, it's one of those things. And yet when you do have a leg to stand on, actually factually, like in credit matters, and especially with collection agencies, most people, because it's so close to home, they react with the fear and they acquiesce, where all they have to do really is say, okay, I'm ready, take me to court. And oh, by the way, the only acceptable proof of my indebtedness is the original wet ink contract. Period. End of discussion. If you do not have the wet ink contract between you and I, there is no contract. There is no indebtedness. That is the entire foundation of the collection agency system when they assume a debt. Okay? In order for them to assume a debt, you have to agree to that contract.
And apparently AIG sold it to HSBC, which in turn sold it to who? Springleaf Financial. And they tried to tell me for a couple of years they were just a name change. I said, no, you're not a name change. I said, where's the signed wedding contract between me and Springleaf? So they sent me 3 copies of the original thing with AIG. I said, that's not what I asked for, is it?
Well, not only is it not what you asked for, but once again, it's also not an acceptable proof of any agreement. And, you know, people play the game when they sign loan papers of the creation of money and I don't have the debt and all of that stuff. And there is validity to a lot of that. There is validity to the fact that your signature creates the money that they're lending you. There is validity to the fact that you pay in your payments for the insurance for your own default, and when you default on the loan, they are paid in full and are not out a dime, and yet they still come to collect from you for you to hold up your end of the obligation. There's truth to that there, but there's a part that other people miss. I agree that this is totally unfair, but when you signed the papers, you agreed to this agreement. There's nothing illegal about these agreements.
But who's truly responsible for that debt? It's the person who signs for that company that you signed with. That's the
Actually,
person.
yes, that is true. The person who is responsible for the debt is the issuing officer of the debt, which is why you can go to court and argue that you are not the ultimate debtor here, that the ultimate debtor is the bank officer who witnessed your signature. And you can sue him civilly for that.
I think I'll do that because I'm already going to file a claim for $25 million for fraud against Springleaf Financial, whatever.
That may work. If nothing else, like I said, in the amount of times that I've gone to court over the years in business over matters of collections and things like that, you learn when to fight and learn when not to fight. And I've been on both sides of it. I've been the debtor, I've been the creditor. You learn the laws very quick, and I'll be honest, court is no place to play in. It's so perverse. It is so bizarre, and all these guys, like, as much as I love Jordan Maxwell and his description of the courtroom being what it is, UCC law, maritime law, and all that stuff, it is all true, as far as the origins go. But if you think you're going to walk into a courtroom and play that game with them, you will lose, and you will lose really bad, and you will lose really hard. Unless you're committed to a long period of time and a lot of dollars. So my suggestion to people when it comes to collection matters is learn what works and learn what's flagrantly on your side, and that is printed on all the loan documents there are. You have 72 hours by law to completely and totally rescind any contract that you enter into willingly. There's also ways to argue your way out of contracts based on them being one-sided and providing you no benefit, and ways of arguing in court your way out of contracts for it's not termed ignorance, but it's basically a form of that there was a failure to disclose certain things. They are valid arguments in collections, but I've seen people get hurt way, way, way more often trying to apply these concepts to some broader concept of escaping the debt of the system. And also, too, I'm going to say this, and this is a personal honor thing. I was born and raised with the fact that the only thing you live with and die with is your word. And I don't care if you got usurped. If you agreed to it and you were in debt, you pay your debts. That's just the way it works. The fact that they scammed you and beat you is in no way, shape, or form an excuse for you to act without honor. Now, I'm not saying not to defend your honor. I'm not saying not to go in there and try. But I will tell you this, and I said it before, the first order of creation is not the word. The first order of creation is intent. So when you go into that courtroom, your intent is going to determine whether you win or whether you lose. And if you think that you're going to act in dishonor just because they acted in dishonor, there's no winning that situation. So, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Learn and move on for the future. But by all means, be careful of your intent when you decide you're going to challenge these people, because ultimately, this is what it boils down to, folks. The government is an opinion with a gun.
That puts it rather mildly.
And they have no problem using it.
Neither do I.
Alrighty.
Now that you're back, I'm going
Will.
to... Welcome back, woo-woo. I'm going to mute my mic, and you guys have 38 minutes.
38. Yeah, this new protocol is causing some bowel issues, so it took me a little longer to get back to the phone. So,
is that a new product, Will's Water Closet Wonder?
Sure, we can make a new one.
Or is this baking with Will urinal cakes?
I needed to laugh today. Thank you so much there, Dr. No.
Hey, whenever you apply the marketing mind of the automotive industry to the wonderful world of holistic medicine, you can only come up with a home run.
What did I miss?
Oh, just me ranting about constitutional tards and sovereignty and collection agents and crap like that based on some correspondence that Dave is having with phone companies and creditors and stuff, which is ultimately how I ended up with my government's an opinion with a gun. And you can try all that crap in court that you want, but ultimately you're going to be broadcasting your advice from a jail cell.
So, you know, we take those principles and relay them over to your symptom-based healthcare thinking. That sounded like Patrick fell off a chair or something.
I heard it too. I don't think it was for me. I don't know.
I don't either. But we take that line of thinking and put that into the bandage theory or the allopathic medical model. And I lump it all into the same. I mean, I'm a staunch hardliner like Patrick when it comes to that. They're all related. You can't. There are no lines of discretion at all in between government, religion, politics, and healthcare out in the general public. We're moving here to West Virginia, and one of the reasons I chose this particular area was because of that reasoning. There's no other natural health care within 100 miles. All we have is the standard old slash and burn slop shop downtown. That's it. There is no other. And I had to go get parts today at the Napa store, and I introduced myself, and the interest in people's face when you tell them what you do I love it. Especially when there's no alternatives around you. The lady at the local health food store, said there hasn't been anybody around for over a decade. The last one was this old lady that evidently she passed on, and no one's stepped up the game here. And they just built a new cancer wing at the hospital here for cancer management. It's kind of like, that's just, you could liken that to like another arm of the corporation of like OSHA. Okay, why would you want to manage your cancer? When cancer, in my book, is a fraud anyhow. We do scans all the time, just about every day of the week. And less than 1% of the time we actually see cancer. That's fraud. But in my world. But yet in the allopathic world, in the industrial world, because their charter says it's okay for them to lie to people, it's legal. Isn't that interesting?
That ties all the way back to the Bob's soliloquy that you were not present for, where I was going to contribute that, show up for court. You'll find that all of the foundations that you think that you're arguing from can be undone with a rule from the bench where they just make shit up out of thin air. And so it's like sitting down to an Old West card game where everybody has a sidearm except you. You are told what the name of the game is, and then they change the rules as you go and as you start to accrue more than they want you to.
It's called, here in the Commonwealths, which is a AKA for the more strategically implemented criminal mafia, AKA government. They have what's called a home rule charter, which states that they can change the rules as they see fit, basically legislating from the bench to make sure that you, the pro se, does not have an advantage. Period. All right, are we here now?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. So, just by what you were saying there, Patrick, that's the game. They control the game, no matter what. You can't expect to have any semblance of justice in the system if they don't deem you to have any justice. So that's why I don't like to play in that game. I don't like that world.
Well, that's why I use the analogy of walking into a rough saloon, sitting down at a table where everybody's armed except you. Why would you do that unless you're forced to?
Well, how about the perception of, instead of forced to, you don't know any different. And then you're victimized.
That describes everybody. The whole world is ignorant, and ignorance is something that can be cured. It's not an epithet of, it's not a derogatory. I'm not name calling. Okay, I just reduced it out of big words. I'm not calling people names if they're ignorant. You can remedy ignorance. But if you choose to be ignorant, then you're on the road straight to hell.
That's the whole game. That's why public education is such a fabulous tool for the industrial system. It lobotomizes your ability to free think, which creates more tools for the industrial world, more pawns for the game. On all levels. So we got like 30 minutes, so there's a call-in number. And there again, it's a 702, I think, right, guys?
It is 702-879-4770.
So if you have something to contribute, a question to ask, or want a reading, call in, and we'll do our best to confound you.
Speaking of confounding, you want to get super woo for a moment?
Oh, I absolutely want to. Patrick, you don't mind, do you? Mr. Spock?
It is logical for us to pursue the woo, no matter how super it is.
I've said this before, the whole chemtrail program is basically just a program of real fancy rattle cans. Okay? It is used by multiple projects, multiple agencies, multiple injuries, multiple industries to perform multiple tasks. What I'm noticing lately, and I gotta love this one, is one of the professed, and when I say professed, they came out and publicly said it, and this to me is once again a way for them to keep your eye on the left hand while the right hand does something real surreptitious. But one of the memes that's been building rapidly and strengthening again is the whole thing of the chemtrails being for geoengineering. And as Patrick and I were talking about earlier, the fact that we firmly believe and science supports that the psychopaths in charge are not exactly the same species of human that, the rest of us are, that the whole global engineering thing has now ramped up into the super woo world of they are re-engineering the atmosphere of the planet so that the aliens can come and live here and be more comfortable because they cannot survive in this environment. So since you were playing with the super plastic snow, and I know Patrick's into what the whole chemtrail chemical spraying multiplex of projects are. Have you guys been exposed to or following this one at all lately?
Actually, see, this is the sad part. I'm old enough to remember 1950s science fiction because I read it as a kid. And these themes, whether you want to call it predictive programming, and if you think it's true, bring me an alien because I'd love to do an autopsy. We can fake up like a level 3 hazmat container and chop them into bits and take a look inside. Show me an alien, but I've read all of this stuff before in 1950s science fiction. So none of this is new to me. And it seems that the internet has a very young population of physically young people. And for those that aren't physically young, their minds are so young and they have such a lack of experience in things like 1950 sci-fi that this seems like a novel idea when it's been around forever.
Well, according to Biology of Aggression, this stuff's been around since your sci-fi days of the 50s, Patrick.
Oh, without a doubt.
I believe that's why the push for the sci-fi entertainment in the programming venue called the television and movies was strategically implemented 30, 40 years ahead of that to make it seem the technology doesn't exist when in fact it really does.
What Bob just said of, look over here, pay attention over here.
So that's a good magician. Sleight of hand.
Are we keeping you awake, Will?
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm good. These little breaks of silence are.
Did you have any other? You said you had a couple of emails. Did you have any other emails? Is there anything we didn't address?
Well, that was the big topic, was about this idea of infectious diseases, and I have all this stuff going on inside of me. And I really want to, I'll say this again. We are a community. We are not just human cells. There are way more microorganism cells than there are human cells. And when everything's in balance, the body's not stressed, we don't notice issues. But when you get a couple of rowdy strains, whether that's E. coli or a malaria or one or more of the Lyme bacterias Or how about the over 90 different strains of the human papillomavirus, which I'm seeing quite a bit more of lately. And then when they show up on their scans, people are going, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Well, I'm under the big perception of you choose to die when you die. And so that comment of, oh my God, I'm going to die, the first thing I always say is, well, do you want to? Or not? Because that perception has everything to do with your ability to stay alive or not. Doesn't matter. A lot of these microorganisms, they're not life-threatening. They are when they get crazy, when they overpopulate and cause damage, like E. coli or malaria or actually acidophilus. I really want to make this really clear because it's all about this balance that we talked about. We're talking about there's no static. I'm seeing more and more people lately, especially those that are into the natural health stuff, having lactobacillus infections, bifidus infections. And they're actually consuming so much, I mean billions of colony-form units, whether it's in yogurt or kefir or kombucha or they're taking pills. They are having outright what would appear to be like a candida fungal infection when in truly it's a bacterial acidophilus infection. This is getting to be very common, especially those that we get to work with coming out of overdoing following these natural health gurus. And so if 10,000 colony-form units of acidophilus is okay, you definitely need 50 billion colony-form, and it'll be better. I mean, that's Patrick's bigger hammer theory. It just doesn't work. It's not based in reality. It may be based in reality if you're on the farm and your 16-ounce hammer doesn't drive the bolt through the hole. You need an 8-pound hammer. But you see, we're not dealing with nails and things in holes. We're dealing with life. And life is about balance. So that was my little rant. I think we're pretty well covered. We hit on everything all at one time. So, I have no more questions. So if you do want us to address things, you can send me an email at Wil, W-I-L, at bodyelectrician.com. Or there's a contact button on the far left on the website that'll get you over to us. So if you want to contribute or you want an answer, please say something, speak up, call, email, do something. Don't just sit there and be victimized because you're doing it to yourself. Just to let you know. Okay, so I'm finished there, Dr. No.
I mean, we could, the last sentence you just said, we could go on for hours. If you're a victim, you're doing it to yourself.
Yeah. This is the empowering context of my belief. You empower yourself to be a victim, or you empower yourself not to be a victim, like a victor. Okay? That is huge.
So basically what you're speaking is be your own savior?
I don't believe we have to be saved, so therefore the savior thinking doesn't even come into my mind.
Well, if the normal state of being is that we are self-imposed victims, then one could possibly argue that we need to be self-imposed saviors. And that might actually psychologically play well into the fact that A, people, generally speaking, like to wear spandex and capes because they think they look good. And B, it plays against the programming of the fact that we are constantly bombarded with other saviors. I mean, isn't that what we talk about? Circus, the Dr. Wizard of Oz. We talk about everybody with their magic pills. We talk about the big three Abrahamics. We talk about the government. We talk about the politicians. We talk about the martyrs. We talk about everybody who just, if we follow them, they could save us from this. Oh my God. With all this help out there, how could we possibly be in such shitty shape?
Because people, in general, are products of their social engineering. And that's the meme out there. That's the virus. You have to look to a guy with a white coat and a stethoscope on his neck for your health. You have to look to the government for your well-being. You have to buy. See, all that's that. What do you say before? Your external savior myth. Well, I'm for an internal savior as a guide. That's our intuition. That's our natural instincts. If you were looking at a four-legged mammal, we have had our natural instincts bred and engineered out of us. This is why people, in my opinion, want, like us on this show, to tell them what to do. Or you say, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that. Then isn't it amazing that the most criticism that we three get is our basic refusal to tell anyone what to do specifically?
Yeah. I mean, I get emails to that effect. I get calls. I've had people call and with absolute, vehement sounds and emotions. Why don't you say this? Well, I'm agreeing with Patrick. Okay, it's much easier, from my perspective, to know where not to step than where to, because I don't want robots. I don't want you to. Believe me, I don't want you to go down the path that I went down. To get my life path, I would not wish my life path on anybody at all, ever. I would not want you to have to go through what I went through to get this knowing that we share with you, that I share my perspective with you every Monday and Wednesday. There's no way. If you would just heed the warning, it's like my dad used to say, just heed my warning. Don't do this. You got all this other stuff you can do. Don't do that. And what do? You touch the hot stove. And then you complain.
Well, like I said, the entire foundation of what basically people have been programmed for, and actually Trem said it in the room just now, probably the most eloquently, was that looking to the outside for power is the disease. Looking for the outside savior is the disease. Oh, I'm sorry, Trixie said it.
Yeah,
sorry,
I would
Trixie.
say that is the disease. That is the big disease. See, here, this is what really astonishes me. We have 100+ years ago a knowledge base that was so phenomenal that it was a big threat to the industrial world. I mean, we're talking rife, we're talking Tesla, Edgar Cayce, Rudolf Steiner. And these people had created fantastic things with minimal technology, minimal engineering feats like we have today. But yet the overall knowledge base point of retardation to a point that I have a very hard time even to pass a 5th grade exam from 1850 or 1830. And the people of today have less ability to free think. And I'm talking on general, because I find myself lumped into this too. We are socially engineered to be retards.
You know, and you mentioned his name, and I'm not going to, soften him up any. Rudolf Steiner had some pretty negative personality traits as far as his opinions on certain things went. Rudolf Steiner was also a Rosicrucian, and some people dismiss him simply because of that. But Rudolf Steiner was a prolific writer and a prolific activist for some of the most self-empowering philosophies and research that there was. And if you can put your prejudices aside, it's not easy reading, but anything that you can get your hands on by Rudolf Steiner to read, he was probably one of the most maligned Renaissance men of the early 1900s. And, you know, it's just unbelievable. If you read through his stuff, like I said, the concepts that he talks about, the concepts that we talk about now, if people, and it's practical, a lot of it's practical stuff too. In fact, I didn't even know about his research into the bees, the whole bees thing, until you had mentioned Steiner's work in the bees, because I just skipped over that stuff. But I mean, his body of work is absolutely incredible, and there's such a wealth of information in there on what I consider to be one of the most untarnished or least tarnished esoteric philosophies of self-empowerment that exist, and probably one of the most accurate collections in the modern era of the tenets of what we collectively lump into the abortions currently known as the mystery schools.
Yeah, right. Mystery schools. His Steiner's work on the bees, the honeybees, was extremely difficult for me to mire through. It was almost as it was worse than trying to read Patrick's stuff. Sorry, Patrick, I just had to do that.
The best compliment I ever had came from that said my book was so dense they had to read it twice.
It was literally, I've read Steiner's stuff 3-4 times, and I usually read your stuff twice minimum. ICD 99, I've went through that thing probably 10 times.
See, and I'm simple. I thought the best compliment you could have as an author, Patrick, was the one Will gave you at the top of the show, that your book is used to beat school nurses to death with.
It was Steiner's lectures translated into English, and then about 3 months of marination, and then reading it again, and then marinating again, that helped me to formulate the products that we have for the honeybees. Because when you can really put yourself in that place. And he was great for that. His ability in his mind to place himself into that situation, into that I mean, where you know that topic, that bug, that plant, that animal so well. That is where true gnosis, and that is where the connection from the knowing comes to you when you open up to that place.
Wow, more marination.
Yeah, I heard all kinds of static and all kinds of weird. It sounded like somebody was beating on something with a pipe. Did anybody
Really?
else hear that? Yeah.
See, I have like great sound today. You dipped out, maybe did the fishbowl thing a couple of times. Patrick has a little static on his line, which cleared up really after the break. But the people in the chat room have been saying that we've been dropping out and you've been dropping out and different things. And for some odd reason, my connection, like last week, I got tossed off the Wednesday show about a half a dozen times. My connection is usually bad, and you guys both sound great to me tonight.
I can hear both of you just fine, but I do hear very, odd squeaks and clicks going on.
Well,
Hey,
you most definitely hear someone chewing on her rib bone if I don't mute out, which is why I've been muting out.
There was a topic that was, or a comment that was just sent to me as a referred back to the acidophilus infections, I believe. If the bacteria consumed through yogurt, etc., is it because the starters come from corn? Probably GMO. I'm going to say that the starters are the actual mother or the actual colonies. The actual microorganism colony is the starter or the mother, and that, as far as I know, that doesn't come from corn. Wouldn't surprise me if it's genetically modified somehow, but it doesn't come from corn. I shouldn't say that unless they're using corn syrup or a maltodextrin, corn-based maltodextrin to feed the cultures. I guess that could be a possibility. You got any input on that, Patrick or Dr. No, anything?
The thing that we keep coming full circle around to, this is like chasing cattle around a pen. It's like herding cats. The question is not what the machine is trying to feed you. The machine will always try to feed you whatever serves its interests. So the question isn't what's in the yogurt that I buy in the store, but if you're going to consume yogurt, why haven't you made it yourself? Then you don't ever have to question what's in it. You made it. See, it goes back. I might have said this once on Wolf Spirit. I guess it bears repeating. I met a guy from China, and he said, everybody starts out on the farm. If you show proficiency in book learning, then you will advance through their system, and you might become what he liked to call a professional. If you did not show any proficiency, you stayed on the farm. Now, that may seem like, a horrific situation compared to the welfare state that we have in the West, but what that does is it gives everybody the rudimentary skills of survival. Everybody starts on the farm. And there are so many people locked into what I call lethal mousetraps, what everybody else calls cities, that they are so far removed from the earth and food production, they don't think anything past getting their weekly paycheck, going to the store and buying what the machine serves them. And we've talked about the hive as a construct. The hive does not exist for you. It doesn't exist for me. It exists for itself. If you don't serve it, it will hunt you down and kill you. So it's about time that, this, you guys are talking about choosing who is going to extract you from this victimhood. If it is you, then you must do the extraction. You must protect yourself. And even if that includes the ancient, I guess Zeus was Greek, the ancient Greek legends of the gods actually ganging together to put down Zeus. It took all of them to do it. But see, they made individual decisions that they were pissed off at him. They wanted to usurp his power. They couldn't do it on their own. And so whereas they weren't looking for an external savior, they worked together for a common goal. And that, to me, epitomizes what's wrong with the entire planet. People can decide to extract themselves from the system, and that is a personal decision. But practically, we can't do it unless we work together.
Well, we have like 1 minute left of the show, and I think we should continue this little conversation again, because this detachment from nature, which most people have now, is part of that root of the disease. Like we were mentioning, the disease, what it was. And we are more of nature than we are of human. So, because it is the end of the show, and we're wrap it up quickly, so I'm wrapping. We'll see you here Wednesday afternoon at 1 p.m. Central again. And this is Another Perspective.
Night all.
Night, night.